around the 3rd of November, 2012. Now, some of you have felt a bit less than ideal today. Seen childish behavior, control dramas, frustration, impatience, all kinds of things that I haven't seen from you guys in a while. If one of you's doing it, you're going through something. If everybody's doing that, what's it tell you? The question is, what's up? The first question. The next question is, what literally big working yesterday? Week or in this much pain? And these talks aren't just me talking. It's me weaving the energy. So I'm not sure how long I'll last here, but I'll see what I can do. I think I'll start in that direction by pushing some buttons. But knowing I'm going to push your buttons, I'll grease the treads first. Most of you have worked with kids. Most of you have at least watched kids. Yes?
Yes.
Alright. How many people have ever said to a 4-year-old, "So you're 4?" And they said, "No, I'm 4.5." Or 5, 5.5, something. How many have had this experience? How many have done this? Probably everybody. Why do children do this? They want to seem bigger and older. And the why of that is a question for another day, though it's an easy one. The thing is, every kid wants to seem bigger and older and smarter and better. Makes sense, right? Everybody's got it. And you recognize, all of it, that you have a kid piece, right? It means somewhere inside there's something that wants to seem bigger and older and smarter and braver and brighter and better and so on. If I tell you you're not 4, you're not 4.5, this part of you is going to squawk a little bit. Most of you can sense a little bit. How many people have sensed somebody other than themselves, have felt someone else's feelings? That pretty much everybody here. Alright. How many people have felt 2 or 3 or 5 people at the same time? For some of us, that is a particularly easy question. But I feel hundreds of people at the same time. What are you talking about? For some of you, maybe you haven't. If you feel the emotions or energies or attitudes of one person, it's a bit like tuning into a radio station. You can hear the DJ talking about what's going on or hear music playing. It's pretty easy to do. Now, since you've got your own voices in your head, it's a bit like having the radio station on while you're watching television. It's a little more confusing. But still, you can do it. You can listen to one and then listen to the other. What happens if you're hearing 5 people at the same time? Tell what all of them are saying? It gets a little confusing. And if you're feeling 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000, pretty soon it starts to sound like a kind of background noise. Even the people who are screaming or complaining the loudest, they kind of get lost amongst all the other voices. This is the domain, this is the home address of the sensor. And to a lesser degree, any meta who's past, say, green belt, because we all get more sensitive as we grow. You begin to sense, to hear, to feel more and more people. Some of you have had this experience. Sensing, hearing, feeling more than one person at a time. Now, those of you who have, ever noticed sadness?
Yes.
Yes. It's, if the emotional thing were a Geiger counter, counting radiation, when you start measuring sadness, it's like walking around a nuclear test site. It's just going off the charts. The needle's banging the end of the meter here. For those who are aware, there is sadness so many places. Everybody's got it. And it's one emotion, one sense that if you tune into, it will just blow you away. It is so big and so huge and so overwhelming. It's not just individuals. It's animals, trees, plants. It's an entire world at war. It's relationships. It's hundreds of thousands of years or more of violent history. The sadness has soaked into the planet. It's in the earth everywhere. And this has been a problem for sensors for a very long time. Basically, you have to get used to feeling a bit sad all the time. Make it in here. Many years ago, I was living in Madison, Wisconsin. And someone I knew there asked me if I knew what I want, and I said, yes, I do. Because I had spent some time there, listing all kinds of things I thought would be useful. And I decided what I wanted out of the rest of my life. And I brought it down to 3 things. I wanted a life that was easy. And I wanted a life that was just lucky, where things worked out. And I wanted a life that was fun, that I could enjoy. Now, if anybody's paying attention, those are the same words on the elf path sign. Yeah, we sometimes use light instead of lucky, but that's where it comes from. My decision in Wisconsin all those years ago. Easy, light, and fun. Can you truly have a life that is light or lucky and fun when one of the strongest feelings you have all the time is sadness, and it comes from everywhere, from all directions? It's kind of tough to have fun when there's this huge depressing sadness. Yes?
Yes.
I mean, it's simple, yeah? So this week I changed it. I went very, very deep into the structure of things. And this isn't something because there's so much of it. As far as this world is concerned, it is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's not something I can just snap my fingers or wave my magic wands around and have it done. This is something where I have to reach deep into the fundamentals of this world and sort of rewrite the source code. And then that change has to work its way out through all the different pieces. And the change I made is very, very simple. It's a 1 to a 0 kind of change. I took all these sources of sadness, little spinning, stable patterns of energy, and I stopped them, and I spun them in the other direction. That's it. Right? And made this a process so that it would copy itself and repeat outward and spread out around this world and further, taking all of this sadness and turning it to joy. Why? Because I want a life that's fun. And I can't do that in a world that's not fun, so I'm changing the world to suit me. But I'm also changing it to suit all of you. Because what Elf Path has promised you is that the road to self-awareness is astoundingly difficult and time-consuming, and that they would try to help you find a way to that self-awareness that's easy and light and fun. Move things in this world a little closer to fun. And I thought, wow, this will be great. In a day or so, everybody will be feeling this. And everybody will be saying, ooh, fun, yay! I overestimated you folks. No, I don't just mean you folks in this room. I mean this whole species of Homo sapiens. I overestimated y'all. You've reacted with much less maturity than I expected. And I understand it now, and I'll try and help you understand what's going on. This is what I mean by the 4.5 thing. I'm telling you that in this you acted younger than might be expected. Imagine that you have a really uncomfortable pair of shoes and they're your only pair. Or you live in a creaky old house that makes lots of noise. Some kind of just slightly obnoxious thing. And you live with it every day for a year, 10 years, 20 years. And you grow old in this house. Now imagine one night you go to sleep and the house is completely quiet. There's no creaky noises. No moaning in the windows, no air blowing through, no drippy faucets, no creaking of mysterious sounds in the wall, no clunking of pipes. You'd think, oh, that'd be great. Without all this noise, I can get some sleep. And you'd lay your head down on the pillow, and 5 minutes later, you're starting to get nervous, tense, and afraid. All of this stuff you've gotten used to, all this annoying stuff, is missing. And you end up getting up and pacing the floor all night. Because you've gotten so used to the annoying. And this is what's happening with the sadness. Every one of you has gotten so used to feeling sad that not having it there or having less of it is making the adult in you freak out and go run and hide. And so most of you have a child or a teenager who's trying to run your life now because the adult's freaked out. The house is just too quiet. And this is not a bad thing. If you can understand it, though. If you can understand it, then you can recognize why it's happening. Roja's fairly wise and stable when it comes to teaching you guys. And she turned into a 13-year-old girl and started bitching at me today. Martin's been wanting to pick a fight with me since first thing this morning. Gimli, the source of energy and fun, has been all mopey and depressed all day. Athrun, it's been so strong she's been hiding. All of us have this, right? Everybody's feeling this. I want you to understand why it's happening, and this will help us find a way to handle it. This is an incredibly exciting thing, right? If it works, I'm still spinning it out. We'll see how it goes. But if it works, this is an astoundingly exciting thing. A world where you don't have this constant background noise of sadness. Where whenever you just relax and feel, you start to feel, oh, hey, that's nice. This is an amazing thing, and I want you to have a chance to experience it as an amazing thing. And to do that, I see that I'm going to have to help you as much as I can find a way to deal with the panic and the fear and the anxiety of this change. Change is difficult. Change is confusing and scary. And when it happens, your system's got used to the old way. It kind of panics a bit. And guess what? It's not just that. It's not just change. I took the sadness and spun it backwards into what?
Joy.
Joy, fun, excitement, right? Now, when you get really happy, so happy you can't stop smiling, you get this big grin on your face. Everybody looks at Martin. When you have this going on, and you start to breathe a little faster, and you're looking around at all this cool stuff, and you're getting excited about life, what happens to your body? Name some things. Your heart rate goes up a little bit. What else?
Breathing faster.
You breathe a little faster.
A little more tension.
A little more tension. Your blood pressure goes up. Your pupils may dilate, yes. Though that one's tough to tell about yourself. You see it in other people. Yes. What I want you to understand, and I've told you this before, but I'll tell you again, physiologically, all these same things happen when you're scared. Your heart starts to race, your blood pressure goes up, your breathing gets faster, your muscles tense. And since this is important, since you've lived a whole life that's been dangerous and threatening, I mean, as a baby, maybe not so much. There were big scary things you couldn't understand. Everything was scary. But as soon as you got into school, You learned that the other kids were cruel, people would pick on you, people would take your things, that teachers were mean and often unfair. You learned the world is not a safe place. And still today, every single one of you knows one or more people. It's just not nice. They'll say nasty things about you behind your back, or, they'll snipe at you when you come around, or in some cases even physically shove you, punch you, claim they're just being playful, but end up being really cruel. Even relatives can say really awful things, perhaps especially relatives. The world is not a safe place. When you were a newborn, all of your emotions were intense and vivid, and all of them worked. But you quickly learned that joy was dangerous. You get excited and start laughing and having fun. Somebody's come along and knock you off your little pedestal. They're going to take whatever toy is making you so happy. They're going to take your joy. You learned that joy was rare. You learned to guard it and keep it inside. We talked about this last time with stuff being stuck in the joy center. Right? We learned to keep that joy. And what you learned is that fear, you don't have to keep that because there's always somebody else going to try and share that with you. There's always difficult stuff. The result is that you're really, really familiar with fear. Every one of you knows what it is to be afraid. Most of you are a little uncertain about what it means to be just really incredibly joyful. You can imagine it, but you don't have years or decades of experience with joy and fun. You've got lots of experience with fear. Yes?
Yes.
So when you feel these physiological things that everybody listed, your mind doesn't say, I wonder what that is. And your scanning doesn't say, ooh, let me deeply scan these feelings and figure out what's going on. Your reaction kicks in immediately. The reaction is, oh, I know these things. This is fear. And it has to, because when you were a kid, if you didn't recognize it right away, things would end up being even worse. You got to recognize right away that something's wrong. Right? So you have this reaction. It may not even get deep into your brain. The reticular activating system, I believe it's called, the thing which filters the input coming to you. It starts to sense this handful of things and immediately says, oh, fear, fear, fear. Respond, deal, do something quickly. And it never even has time to get into your brain so your brain can say, what's going on? Why do I feel this way? It never has time to get to your medicine so you can scan it and say, here's this bunch of things. What do I do? The immediate response is, oh, this is fear. Panic. This is something you're going to have to retrain. Because excitement, celebration, fun, has a lot of the physical symptoms of fear. And your children and your grandchildren, they won't have this problem. They'll grow up in a world where joy is much more common and fear is very rare. You guys, in the bridge phase here, the transitional phase, are going to have to retune. And until you do, you've got these two problems. The one, this is a change, and change is difficult. Right? Every time you start feeling it's not the same, something's wrong, something's missing, there's going to be this anxiety because change is scary to most folks. And there's this fundamental problem that when you start to feel, ooh, your immediate response is, oh my God, fear, what do I do? What's wrong? And then you start to panic and you start to get nervous. And a fear that lasts long enough ends up being something we call anxiety. A long-standing fear just goes on and on and on. So the last 2 or 3 days, I'm willing to bet that most of you have felt what you would call anxiety. The result is that instead of being strong and stable, you start to get fussy. Anxiety over time, it's kind of exhausting. You start to get fussy and impatient. You start to snap at people. You start to be used.
foolish high hopes for humanity that I could just spin these around and everybody go, oh my goodness, fun, this is great. And in fact, and this is not anybody's fault, you were programmed in childhood to be very familiar with fear and not with joy. And so what's happening is that childhood programming is kicking in. And every time you start to feel, instead something kicks in and you go, the fear rather than the fun. So this may be tough for you guys to do. If you would ground, you would quit doing that. This may be tough, but I'm going to ask you to try something. What I want you to do is ground and center, and I want you to look for sadness. It used to be that as soon as you relaxed, there were waves of it, you were overwhelmed. I want you to actually look for it. See if you can find omnipresent sadness. Yeah, there'll be some. You'll have little bits of sadness, they'll be around, but this overwhelming wave that's been part of this world for so long, sense it, hear it, smell it, taste it, however it works for you. See if you can find it. Now I've done this longer and deeper than most of you, so I can't be objective. But I usually sense this wave of sadness that's very, very big. It covers a very large area. Right? And I don't have to look for it. It's just there, pressing on me all the time. I can't find it. Now, tell me, those who just tried that, how many of you can find that big, dense, heavy wave of sadness? Nobody?
Heavy background noise, isn't there?
Right. Because again, this world shouldn't be handled like a machine. I've told you this before. It should be handled like a garden. I'm not just going to go and flip a big lever and turn all of the sadness into joy. Instead, I reach into the roots of things and start spinning the other way, and it's working its way up. This is why you'll still find what Rohan calls chunks of it, instead of this big wave. And it will continue, probably for many years to come, because it's got to work its way very deep into the stored stuff, and it's got to get into dreams and deep into the shamanic realm. It's got to expand. But it has begun, and it's begun very rapidly expanding. Maybe you shrug and say, yeah, so take a moment and think. Imagine something that has weighed your world down like a huge, heavy, wet blanket where you can hardly breathe for years, and now it's tough to find. I mean, just imagine that's pretty insane. But you can see why parts of you are going, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. Imagine a plant that just loves the sunshine, just soaks it up, grows big and strong. Now imagine somebody plants that plant in, say, London back in the 1800s where it was fogged in all the time. Maybe that plant grows into, I don't know, a tree or a vine or a trellis, up a trellis, something very, very big. And many, many years, day after day after day, all it ever knows of the sun is this kind of one pale light peeking through a dense fog. Imagine something comes by and blows all that fog away. And suddenly this plant standing in the open sunlight. Well, if it's a plant that loves the sunlight, ultimately it's going to be going, oh my goodness, this is great. It's going to start soaking it up and growing like mad. But do you suppose that's going to be the plant's first response?
Nope.
No, it's going to say, eek. I don't know what to do. This is scary. It's hot. It's new. It's kind of nice, but no, it's scary. This is the kind of change, as if you've been wrapped in a dense cloud for as long as you could remember, lifetime after lifetime, and that cloud is clearing. You can see that that's a big change. You can see why it would provoke fear or anxiety or uncertainty or frustration or confusion. You can also see the way out of it. like the little plant. You just have to open up and bask. You just have to start soaking it in. How does that work? Well, you're used to reaching out, most of you, and feeling a bit of sadness, or some of you a lot of sadness. And so, you start to keep a little shell around yourself so you don't have to feel so much. What you need to start doing is intentionally letting your senses unfurl a bit. Tasting the waters, sampling the air, soaking up a little of the sunlight. And at first it's going to be a little tentative, like a kid putting their toes in a swimming pool. Ooh! Nope, it's too cold. But then some other kid jumps in and they're splashing and laughing, and suddenly the temperature of the water's forgotten and they leap in and they're splashing and everything's good. It's going to have to be like that. At first, I'm telling you, just, dip your toes in it once in a while. Start to see how you feel. At some point, you'll be ready to just dive in. Now, I'm intentionally mixing metaphors here, because this isn't, let's say that your culture, your society, your various languages, they have no words or metaphors to describe this sort of change. Just don't. Something nobody ever thought could happen. And so I'm kind of mixing metaphors to try and, what paper mache is? You take a bunch of strips of paper and wrap them around a form. It's sort of like that. I'm sort of paper macheing metaphors onto this invisible shape here so you can kind of get a feel for what it looks like. Good news is for you, you just have to watch the mixed metaphors. I'm the one who's actually juggling. Watermelon, chainsaw, live chicken, young tiger. Yes. You just get to watch. Fundamental problem is that the messy stuff is much, much less. This huge sadness is fading, and it's not like an avalanche. When I first started, there's just a little trickle, but each piece hits another and another. It's going to build and build and build until sadness is... It'll still be possible to be sad. I didn't take it away. Vast sewage tanks of sadness that covered everything. These are a fundamental problem here. Is that things are getting pretty amazing. That things are easier and more fun. That the weight that's been on your shoulders for a long time is missing. And you're standing up straight going, no, this feels wrong. I want my weight back. I want to be sad again. And it's not just the sensitive people. Just about everybody's a meta. There are people who are born blind. They're rare. But for the most part, every human can see. It's part of the package. And it's the same with the meta skills. There are a few people who have been born with simply no meta skills. It's meta dysfunction. They need little, handicap stickers with the chakras on it or something in their car. But these people are very rare. Just about everybody has some meta. They don't access it, they don't use it, but it's there. Which means just about everybody is aware of the sadness. Even if they're not consciously aware, they sense it. And so everybody's being affected. And the result is that people are nervous or twitchy or anxious because something's changed. So expect people in your life to be a little edgy. Expect them to say nasty things once in a while. Expect a little messiness to come out of this. And expect it to come from you too, as you're going through this. Now that you've got this little secret, what's causing it and why it's happening, you have something you can do. The first is, as I said, simply start sensing it. Next, when you've started to sense it, just watch your reaction. When you start feeling this, you walked in tonight and you're, oh, wow, it's such a tough day. Within 3 minutes of sitting here, you were bouncing like this back and forth. Right? You like to fuss and argue all the time. And yet, just about every time today that I've seen you not paying attention, You start, yeah, like that. That smile comes out. And I feel that if you tried to shut it off, you'd have a hard time. You know, months ago, you had this permanent droopy dog face on, and when you tried to smile, it was like taking a car jack and then it'd slip, and you'd be back to droopy dog. Now, it's almost like you've got to take and force it down. I can't make it go away. I just want to stop. What's wrong? I don't like it. What I'm telling you is this is what's going on. This is something you get to get used to. So, as I was saying, the next step, after just dipping your toes in the water, spreading your leaves and soaking up a little sun, the next step is to watch your reaction to it. First response is going to be, oh, nope, this is new, and new's bad, and bad's scary, and no. And you want to watch that response and say, oh, I know you. You're not my friend. And you're going to talk to yourself a little bit like a kid, because the piece of you that's going to be responding to this will be something from when you were much younger. Watch that response, and you're going to feel it happen. It's, oh, I know you. And you're going to say, wait a minute, I remember that talk. I know what's really going on. And you're going to look inside and go, ooh, hey, that's kind of nice here. That actually feels kind of fun. Or if you're a decent sensor, you're going to start spreading your senses out. Going, oh my goodness, there's a happy person, and that's kind of cool. And look at that. And there's a happy tree. And when you do this, when you watch your reactions and see it start to go, oh no, fear, you can say, aha, I know what's really going on. And you can stop that reaction. You can't stop it before it happens. But once it happens, once you find yourself barking at somebody or being all kinds of anxious or hiding in a corner or curled up like a vulture or whatever your thing is, arguing about Einstein, you can say, I know this reaction and I know what it means. It means deep inside something's excited. And it's okay to be excited. And then you go in and find that little piece and say, hey, it's okay to be excited. And you let it start to percolate up a little bit. And as you focus on this and pay attention to it, it will get clearer to you and more obvious and stronger. And personally, I recommend doing this when you have a chance with other people who are aware of it. Because it's easy to get bored or grumpy or frustrated or lost or whatever your particular issues are when you're alone. But when you're sitting next to somebody else and they're doing this. Yes, exactly. It's a little tough to be all grumpy and serious. Right? So be around others who are going through this. Obviously, I always say that. When you're working on these things, be around the others who are going through it. But see, fun is a thing that's really meant to be shared. Step 1. Toes in the water, leaves out, whatever. Step 2, watch your reaction. And when you see the eek or the eep or the irk, step 3 then will be to change your reaction, to intentionally change it. And then step 4, which is going to be a little further down the road till most of you get brave enough, but I think I'll call it the cannonball. I was a youngin', and we used to go to the swimming pool. That was considered the most dramatic way to enter the swimming pool. You'd find someone who was sitting there being fussy about how cold the water was, and you would run and curl yourself into a ball and make the biggest splash you could to get everybody wet. This is my recommendation. This is my suggestion on step 4. That when you get to a point where you're comfortable with the first 3, see about just cutting loose and jumping in and try and splash as many people as possible. Grumpy old guy over there reading his newspaper. He's at a pool. He shouldn't be reading a newspaper. Splash him. Get his paper all wet. Right? Make an impression on these people. And you may find, like jumping into a chilly swimming pool, you get in there for a moment and go, oh no, I can't do this. And you're going to jump out. And you're sitting aside and shiver for a while. But that's okay. And you just go back to doing the first 3 steps. And once in a while you look out and watch all the other kids having so much fun. And when you're ready, you go back to step 4, do it again. Right? Not obvious. Taking a big ball and chain, tying it around your ankle, and throwing it in the pool to drag you in. This isn't exactly a useful approach to fun. Yeah. Forcing yourself to do this and stay there. Nah, it's not so useful. This is more about poking and playing, and when you're ready, jumping in, and if you get freaked out or overwhelmed, you run out and hide, and when you're ready, jump in and play again and splash with the other kids. What I want you to do, to circle back to where we started, remember the 4.5 thing? I want you to recognize that you all have it. Even Shakespeare, how noble is man. Like an angel, like a god. Everyone wants to think they're great and amazing and wonderful and grown up. I want you to recognize that you're not. Yes, you're amazing. Yes, you're wonderful. Everybody is. But you're not this grown up. You're not this old, grumpy, wise person. Much of you is still a kid. And so when you do this process, expect the kid to come out. If you had a music teacher when you were 4 who was a great music teacher, and you started on a little plastic flute or something, and you got fascinated with music, by the time you're 10 or 15, you've got years of experience and you're going to be a good musician and you're going to really like it. But let's imagine you're 30 and you've never touched a musical instrument. Are you going to be as good as that person who's done it since they were 4? Why not?
Has more practice.
They've got more practice. If you in your lifetime have never had a good teacher of what it is to be joyful and playful and have fun, there are a few people who have, but they're rare. Most of us didn't have that. Then you're a bit like someone starting to play music. And so you're going to have to go back and take that clarinet and make awful squeaky and squawky noises and, keep screwing up the fingering and get the scales wrong and forget how many half notes and whole notes and, which are sharps and which are flat and, what's the difference from G major. And you're going to have to learn that stuff. And it's going to take you some time and some practice. And when you do it, you're going to make beginner mistakes. Why? Because you're a beginner. If you don't have a lifetime of practice at joy, then you're a beginner. And beginners make beginner mistakes. And that's okay. Beginners are allowed to make beginner mistakes. You're going to have trouble. You're going to get scared. You're going to get fussy. You're going to get confused. All this stuff's going to come up. And I want you to understand this is okay. This isn't a dysfunction. This isn't a problem. This is just a confused reaction to something wonderful. And you get to read. It wasn't actually one I was planning on doing. It isn't in my schedule. But it felt right at that point. So, in a sense, it's kind of an incidental thing. But I have a feeling. Feeling says that this one may end up being one of the more significant ones, as far as how much people notice and how it impacts them. Thought it would be kind of an incidental thing, just start patching this up. I didn't expect a strong reaction, but now that I can sense this may be a really big thing, it means I did it somewhere around Halloween. Appropriate, taking a holiday dedicated to horror and violence and all kinds of ugliness, and taking that day to turn all the fear, the sadness, into some significance to sow in. I really don't know. Not my readapting something you've wanted your whole life and haven't had, but now that you've had gentle with yourself and a little being kind to others while you're doing it. I will suggest to you, because at least for those of you who are here, that Roha manipulated you tonight. And you didn't notice it. I'm not even sure if she noticed it. She went and found several different kinds of the nastiest poison-looking fungus things, weird growths and bumps and lumps. And she tossed them all in a pot, and she didn't stop there. Right? She put really, really hot sauce on it. Right? And then 15 different kinds of weird snacks that look like worms and taste like crazy things, right? And she didn't stop there. While you're eating, she kept poking people. Ah, that's a really weird taste. Oh, that looks like a worm. Try that one. And, ooh, that's really slimy, right? She was pushing you. She was giving you things to be annoyed at. Because this is what I've seen a lot of today. Annoyed. Annoyed is a frustrated impatience. Because the first day of this change, there might have been fear, uncertainty. The second day, anxiety as it built up. But 3 days or so in, that anxiety, that frustration, all that builds up, and you start running out of patience, and you get kind of grumpy, fussy. So fussy and annoyed. What she did was give you something to focus that fussy on. Because you didn't know what it was, and it was driving you nuts, and she gave you something to be fussy about. So now that you know what it is that's making the fussy, the frustrated, the grumpy, maybe it won't be so much. However, training the mind, saying, here's what it is a little simpler than training the guts. Guts, it's okay. This is fun. No, it's not. I don't like it. Yes, it's fun. Try it. I'm not going to try it. I don't like it. Just try it. No, I'm not going to do it. We had a 3-year-old here this morning, and he came in and he was grumpy and angry and rah, 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 rah. And I suggested his mom tell him to ground. And so Mom turned to him and said, can you stomp your feet? Can you ground? And he said, no. And she said, yes, you can. No. And she eventually ended up taking the toy he was playing with and setting it aside so we'd pay attention. And he cried, and he whined, and he tried to lay on the floor and play helpless and put his head in Mom's lap and scream. And, 33 different flavors or 31 flavors of poor me. He did them all. And it went on and on. It was 10, 15 minutes of this. And Mom just kept talking to him and saying, it's okay. And when he lay on the floor, lay his head in his lap and sob, she'd just take his hands and set him up so that she was looking at him, sit up straight, pay attention. And she'd say, you can ground, stomp, just stomp your feet. No! And this is what it's going to take. I can train your head now. I can say, here's what's going on. You go, oh, cool, nice to know. I'm done. Right? But you're going to have to train your guts. And this thing in the guts is the one that says, I'm 4.5. I'm a grown-up. Don't talk to me like that. It's not. It's a little kid. And you're going to have to do what this lovely woman did today. Every time it goes into its trauma, whatever your favorite one is, and everybody's got a favorite, you have to take it by the little hands, make it sit up straight, look it in the eyes, say ground, stomp, stomp. And you're going to have to keep doing it over and over and over until finally the little kid gets so tired of arguing, he says, okay, it stomps, blah, 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 blah. And, 30 seconds later, the kid's relaxed and playing and, played all day with Martin and had all kinds of fun. You're going to have to take this approach. You're going to have to take this crying, squawking little kid piece inside, and instead of getting caught in it, and become a crying, squawking little kid, you can say, aha, I know what that means. Because I heard about that in that talk last Saturday night. That means something's excited, and I'm not sure how to handle it. And so you're going to grab that little kid piece and say, hey, ground, sit up straight, breathe, ground, feel the excitement. No! Feel it. No! Feel it. Ground, breathe, feel. It's amazing. No! And you're just going to keep talking gently to it until the kid says, okay. And it's going to do it, and it's going to, oh, this is wonderful. And it's going to play and have fun until the next time it freaks out. And that's going to happen again. Because training your guts, it's not like reprogramming a computer. You can't do it once and be done. It's more like training a little kid. And for those of you who've worked with little kids, you know, you gotta tell them again and again and again. And if you yell at them and get grumpy, they're not gonna get it. I don't feel that you can teach your guts about joy by yelling at them and making them terrified. I'm fairly gonna have to be the grown-up here for your own inner pieces and talk to them and reassure them. And the more that you can, I know that all of you can center and ground and breathe, the more that you can move beyond those basic steps to actually reaching out, trying to touch the joy, the fun. Oh, hey, this is kind of cool. The more you'll find yourself like this one. Yes, exactly. Just like that. So, I recommend that as you do this, as you go through this process of retraining the inner kid who never really learned what it is to be joyful, keep encouraging it. Just reach out and touch it. And here I have two people bouncing back and forth with dopey smiles on their faces. This is the answer. Get as many people wet as possible. And as you do this, you're going to have to do it more than once, because it's a little kid in there and it's not going to be comfortable. You're going to have to train that little kid piece. And what you'll find is that the more that you do, there's some things like grounding and breathing, boy, it just gets tiring after a while. This one you're going to find the more you do, the more you want to do it. The more you want to do it, the more you do it. The more you do it, the more you want to do it. Woo! Pretty soon you're going to be walking around like Martin with a dopey smile on your face and no idea why. I don't understand it. I don't get it. Doesn't make sense to me, but I can't stop smiling. And this is really what you're looking for, not to understand it. And to really perceive this, sense this, feel it inside. And when you start annoyed, paranoid, whatever your particular little game is, that you go back to these steps. That you, very short time, you're going to find this is natural. And for all those people who aren't paying attention, it's going to take them longer. But I challenge you to watch. Over here in the Netherlands, it's a kind of a national sport to look like a trout, to walk around. And to complain about everything. It's just complain. I challenge you. Here is a great place to do it, but you can do it anywhere. Just to watch people and start seeing if there's a difference. You should start seeing more people smiling, more people laughing. Or through a shop and see people talking to one another and maybe bouncing a bit. And watch for it in them. Because they're not going to know what's going on, and they're going to fight it, and they're going to squawk. But defending fragile human egos, it's been my experience that the vast majority of humans are not that smart, and most of them are pretty lazy. So they'll fight this. Oh, I don't know, it's different, this is weird. But it won't last more than so. It's just too much work to keep fighting. It's like, whatever, have a beer, turn on the television. And they're going to be sitting there with their beer and their television bouncing. And not knowing why. And so, I don't imagine it will be a problem. That, for most people, it will just integrate into their lives. What happened and why. Suddenly they're happier. And their relationships are going to get better and life should change. Programming, it's not writing a book. This is not chiseling something out of stone. All I can do is plant the seeds. I can trigger things at a really fundamental level. But then I've got to turn them loose. Right? I'm that mystical butterfly flapping my wings and creating a hurricane in Taiwan. I'm not sure that even if I wanted to, I could tell you how this is going to play out or what's going to happen. But I can tell you the shape of what's happening so far. I can tell you why it's happening. Within yourself, to watch for this, right? Reach out, soak it up, watch your reaction, change your reaction, and so on. And in others, watching their reactions. Very tough for me to sense what's going to happen with this many variables across a system this complex and something so fundamental. You can keep your mouth closed if you're riding a bicycle. You don't want to swallow any flies, right? Eyes, ears, nose, they stay open. You want to pay attention. Because a lot of the things I've told you in the time I've done this, been things like, here's a piece you're going to have to sort out. And here's an exercise you're going to have to do, and it's going to, be a little difficult. Here's, something to work on. And this is perhaps the first time I'm telling you, your assignment this week is to go out and have fun. I don't mean go out looking for, right, I got to plan a date, I got to go to a bar and drink a lot. No. Just to go out and pay attention and notice that suddenly things are more fun. This is it. This is your assignment. Oh my goodness, such hard work. How did he do this to us? Oh, I'd rather write a term paper. I know some of you would. Term papers are more familiar. When you start doing this, it's going to start feeling more familiar. You're going to start going, oh my. Basically, I'm nudging you rather more thoroughly than you might realize to try this. Gently, try it. And try it again, and try it again. Start retraining your inner self to try it. And I have a feeling that, the snacks, that once you eat one, you can't stop. Bag here. Understand that sadness is still present. Understand that I'm taking a drain that was clogged up here and knocking things loose. But that means there's going to be little bits of stuff floating around for a while. So, you may be walking along and suddenly be hit in the head by a big clod of sadness. Yeah, well, what do you do, Martin, when you feel sadness? You feel it. Words of wisdom from the young master here. When you feel sadness, you feel it. That's it. Because once you feel a feeling, then it can go. And so you get hit by a little clod of it, and oh my God, no, sadness, I don't want that anymore. You stop, there's sadness. And you feel really sad for a little while, 30 seconds, 60 seconds if you're slow. And then you ground and you breathe and you let it go. And then you go back to bouncing. Much more I could tell you, but we're running shy on time here. I'll tell you how tasty that wonderful dish of food is. I like this and take their word for it. Yep, I know it's tasty because they told me so. Will I talk to you next, whenever that is? What I want you to do.